Welcome to Nodevember Day 2, which is about fire. So this one I did on my laptop, and I did it mostly in shaders. So using the Bforartists shape, I used a circle mask and then a skew deform in the vector nodes that we have included as the default asset. All of it's procedural thanks to Animating. And then from there I used also a twist kind of system to bring in the vectors, and I then have to rotate it in. So basically I'm using a whirlpool twist plus a shear vector onto a teardrop shape. And then from there I start to use two different values, a ping pong on a time based on a certain width, then I map range it to the certain deformations of these shapes, and I set that to a different onto the shear as well. So from there I take on a basic noise, 3D noise, and I use linear light from the teardrop to bring it in on the float value of the shape so that I can break up the edges of the shape. And then I use the same frame onto the y-axis of that shape into the general idea of it. So if I'm using like two different frequencies, a small frequency for the shear, or a high frequency for the shear, and a low frequency for the whirlpool twisting, I can kind of get with a constant up vector of the noise, I can then use that to drive the alpha and the emission. So I thought that kind of worked, but I also needed to get some extra, I had to scale it upwards because I was eating it away with the math of using add. But using the linear light, I could then start tuning it to taste. So it looks a little bit fast because I'm running it at 10 times the speed. So from there, I start to get two separate values of math and a greater than to kind of bring out two separate masks built from the same shape. I then add in a linear gradient, rotate it around. I use that to also drive the colors with another mix color shape into it, so that I can bring out that look of a red and yellow. So then I'm start using a random per object node that we have included as an asset, which also works in Eevee, to try change some of the values with different types of multiplication. I wasn't too successful because I couldn't get the math. I should have just plugged this into the actual frame drive and offset that or multiplied that to change the different values and kept the same seed and use the frame. The frame is basically the seed over time, but I didn't. So I tried using map ranges, multiplies. I tried to plug it into different values like the vector offsets and the vector shapes, but it was so barely noticeable that my original idea wasn't going to work. So I thought, okay, so it's duplicating, some of them are randomizing, but it's still very similar. So let's see what I can do. So I go into the compositor, I add a bloom, which is looking alright, and then I think of what I should do next. So I use a basic simple subdivision and then a shader displacement to bring that out. So now that I have the shader displacement, the geometry, and the Eevee bump and displacement settings, I can then use that system to bring out a different look. So then I try to remember how to get a camera-facing geometry node system, but I forgot it. So I decided to think, okay, what do I do with this artistic piece? So I thought, okay, let's just focus on one flame. I'm running out of time. So let's add in a bit more touch and create a new shape. Align it to the top using the brush tip shape from the Bforartists assets. Then I use the same noise deformation and linear light that back in and create a smoke shader or mask and invert it and then composite back in. So right now it's taking a long time because I'm using a lot of mixed shader nodes, and I think that's not the right way to do it. So I decide to go around another route, and I build a basic dotted background based on the proportions to kind of see what I want. So I added some refraction to the smoke as well, because heat refracts light into the smoke, and I wanted that in, but it's taken a while to compile because I'm mixing in shaders. So I decide to remove it and compile in a new system of the refraction into the other system by only mixing in the emission and the light with a new type of mask. So I take the shadow mask and I subtract it, or do some math to kind of bring out the correct type of emission mask and the correct type of smoke mask into the system, which took a little bit of trial and error because it was a huge mess. I wasn't organized. As you can see, it's now a giant spider web of systems. So I overlaid it on top over the red, but then I decided to just use the color masks of the flame and keep everything else as a simple gray-white for the smoke. So now I have my emission color and my emission mask working correctly. So then I re-hook up everything and make sure I have my refraction also baked in. So I'm only using 3 shaders instead of 5 or 6. So then I start to organize it a little bit, try to make it a bit cleaner, tidier, and I put it all together and finally tune the look, tune the smoke, tune the position of the smoke, and start thinking about, okay, so what should I do for the scene? It kind of looks okay on black, but let's add in some extra add-ons and figure out my animation based on the null, which is my typical 20 degree, 100, 200 frames, quartic keyframes, ease in and ease out, which kind of shows the 3D look of the flame. So then from there, I decide to add an extra gradient with slightly blue at the bottom of the thing, with an extra breakup for using linear light from the same noise onto that vertical gradient. And it's looking okay, looks nice, very cartoony. So then I go into the world shader. I use window coordinates for some gradients, and I use 2 gradients with different shapes and sizes with mapped ranges to bring out 3 different colors. So I used the first color. I thought a sky blue would be nice, like an evening, nice late evening with a kind of sunsetty vibe, but red on red I thought wasn't a very good contrast. I then built a ground. I use a circle shape with the softness built in. It's a solid shape, so I soften it out, used it as a mask, used that as like a reflective floor, which is nice and dark because there's not a lot of light in the world, so I can show the light reflecting from the flame. And then I thought, this purple and blue I don't like. So I decided to go back into color, start tuning the color a little bit. I got a crash from the compositor, so it's a 5.1. So I go back into the system, I load a recovery file, then I save the file, and then I do my color balancing again. Everything's working fine, and I'm still not happy with the colors or the look. So I'm trying to poke around and see, okay, what should I do? Why is the flame purple? Then I realized it's from the refraction. It's just picking up the purple background from the IOR. So I decided to darken the background and change the colors of it. And I thought, okay, that's good. Now let's render. And this is the final piece. So tomorrow's one is ice. I hope you like what's coming. And on Friday, I'll be doing one of these live in the Being an Artist show at 1400 Central Standard Time or 1900 UTC. See you then.